Piccolo's death during the Saiyan saga is one of the most iconic and emotionally impactful moments in the entire Dragon Ball franchise. In fact, for many people, it's the moment that cemented Piccolo as their favorite character. So that, of course, begs the question, how did the Dragon Ball Z English dubs handle this moment? Well, I'm gonna tell you right now that they handled it horribly. So in this video, I'm gonna go deep and I'm gonna show you how the Dragon Ball Z dubs ruined one of Dragon Ball Z's best moments. I'm also gonna look at the Dragon Ball Z Kai dub and the Spanish Latin American dub in order to see if they did it any better. Let's get into it. Hey guys, if you're still here, I guess that means you're awesome and you're not one of those people that gets all upset whenever I say anything remotely critical about the English Dragon Ball Z dubs. You suck and I haven't even watched the video. All I did was look at the thumbnail. Sorry about that. I get a lot of people like that in the comments. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe. Let's begin by taking a look at the original Japanese that was used in the scene where Piccolo sacrifices himself. Specifically, we're going to be taking a look at the sequence that begins right after Piccolo takes the blast from Nappa up until the point where he dies. By the way, the dialogue in this sequence in the original Japanese is exactly the same as what Toriyama wrote in the manga. And as always, this is my translation of the original Japanese. Mr. Piccolo! Run, Gohan! Mr. Piccolo, why did you save me? I said run! Hurry, get out of here! Don't die! Dad will be here any moment, and he'll defeat these guys. Please, don't die. Prepare yourselves, this is my Kami voice. It appears my life has finally come to an end. Goku didn't make it in time, but at the very end, Piccolo has surpassed me, and I'm happy to see it. This is Piccolo again. What a joke for the great Demon King Piccolo to protect some brat. How pathetic. Mr. Piccolo. Gohan, you're the only one that ever talked to me like a normal person. This year I spent with you, it wasn't so bad. Mr. Piccolo, don't die. Go. Oh, Mr. Piccolo. I know, my voice acting is really good. I know a lot of you are leaving comments right now praising me about that. I appreciate that. But there's a couple things that I want to mention here before we get into the analysis. First of all, I cut out any extra lines that weren't relevant to the analysis. Like there's a line that Nappa says and something that Mr. Popo says. Stuff that is superfluous here, I just cut it out because I want to focus specifically on Piccolo, Gohan, and Kami. The other thing that I want to point out is that my translation is only one possible translation. You can translate this an infinite amount of ways, and if I was trying to go for something that sounded really natural, I would probably have translated things a little bit differently, but I wanted to keep it as plain as possible because this is going to be our reference when we're looking at the dubs. Alright, so now we're ready to take a look at what the best English dub of Dragon Ball Z did. Of course, I'm talking about Funimation's Ocean dub.
Piccolo?
It's okay, kid. No sweat.
Hey, Piccolo, why'd you have to go do that? Now you're hurt.
I'm phasing to another dimension. Wish me back, okay? It's up to you.
But Piccolo, you can't leave us now. I don't know how to wish you back. And besides, we need your help.
Sorry, I had to stop here because I'm phasing into another dimension. Wish me back, okay? I love that line. As I was working on this script for this episode, I had to watch that scene a few times, and I kept laughing while I was watching it because it's comedy gold. But in terms of whether it's accurate to the source material, no, this whole thing, no, it is not accurate at all. Okay, let's get serious. So, as I stated earlier, Piccolo sacrificing himself is one of the most emotionally impactful moments in all of Dragon Ball. But the Ocean dub turns this moment into an absolute joke. Basically, it turns it into a parody of Dragon Ball. You know how a lot of people say that Dragon Ball sucks because it has no stakes? In other words, the Dragon Balls are there, so if anybody dies, they can just be wished back. Well, having a character say, "Wish me back, okay," is exactly that. You couldn't parody Dragon Ball any better than doing what the Ocean dub did here. At this point in the story, all we know is that Vegeta thinks that there's another set of Dragon Balls on Namek. Nobody, including us, the viewers, knows if Vegeta's actually correct about this. Goku and the gang don't have a spaceship that they can actually go to Namek with, and even if they did have a spaceship, they don't know where Namek is. So at this point in time, in the original Japanese, going to Namek and collecting the Dragon Balls and wishing everybody back isn't an option that's on the table for Goku and the gang. That's exactly why this scene has weight to it. That's exactly why Piccolo's death has meaning, because he died not knowing that there would be a way to bring him back. The focus of this scene is, of course, Piccolo's sacrifice, and to a lesser extent, the fact that these characters are doing everything they can in order to survive until Goku gets there. But by having Piccolo say this, it throws all of that into the trash. And of course, the whole phasing into another dimension and erasing any mention of death, not good at all. It definitely ruins this moment. Another thing worth pointing out is that in this version, Piccolo doesn't tell Gohan to run away. And to make things even worse, Piccolo tells Gohan, "It's up to you." He's basically saying the exact opposite of run away. This is awful and makes no sense. First of all, if Piccolo actually thought that Gohan was strong enough to take on Nappa or Nappa and Vegeta, then why the hell did he step in front of the blast? He should have just let Gohan handle it by himself, because apparently Gohan can just go get him and take on Nappa. This, again, it makes no sense. On top of this, by not having Piccolo say run away to Gohan, you lose an amazing contrast that happens with the scene prior to this one. Remember, right before Piccolo sacrifices himself, there's a moment where Gohan is ready to put his life on the line for Piccolo. Gohan tells Piccolo to run away because he knows that if Piccolo dies, they're gonna lose the Dragon Balls and they're not gonna be able to wish their friends back. And of course, Gohan does not want to see Mr. Piccolo die either. Of course, we don't know what Piccolo was thinking in that moment, but you gotta assume that seeing Gohan ready to put his life on the line for Piccolo had some influence on Piccolo. And so when Gohan's life was in danger, Piccolo stepped in and he sacrificed himself. But this back and forth of Gohan trying to protect Piccolo by telling him to run away, and then Piccolo telling Gohan to run away, it's gone from the Ocean Dub. All right, we're done with this part. Let's see what the Ocean Dub did with what Kami says.
That's right. Piccolo's power is fading. Soon we will both be in another dimension. But while Earth's Dragon Balls will be gone, another batch exists on our home planet Namek. Use them to bring us back.
No good. So here too, we get a mention of another dimension, and Kami does the same thing that Piccolo did in the previous sequence. Kami tells Mr. Popo to wish them back. Don't worry, kiddies. There's another set of Dragon Balls out there. We're not actually dead. We'll be back very soon. So I'm not going to repeat myself too much here, but yes, this moment also ruins Piccolo's sacrifice. Also, this moment kind of ruins that surprise that happens with Mr. Popo showing up at the hospital where Goku is. Remember, Bulma and the gang are wondering how they're going to get to Namek because they don't have a spaceship, and then Mr. Popo shows up and tells them about Kami's spaceship. Another thing worth mentioning here is that this moment is supposed to be about Piccolo and his sacrifice. Of course, the Ocean Dub completely changes this, but what Kami says in the original Japanese is that Piccolo has surpassed him, and he's happy to see that. Now, I do want to point out here that what Kami says is written in a slightly vague way in the original Japanese, so it's easy to get the impression that what Kami is talking about is power and strength, because what Kami says in the original Japanese is that Piccolo has surpassed him, or something along those lines. But Kami isn't talking about raw strength or power. What Kami is talking about is the fact that Piccolo used to be his evil side, right? And now he just did this amazingly, incredibly kind and good thing. And so in a sense, Piccolo just surpassed him in terms of his ability to do good, in terms of the good action that he just did. And so that made Kami happy. Remember that because this is going to come up later on. And lastly, before we take a look at the last part of the Ocean Dub, I do want to mention one more thing, and that is that right after this moment with Kami, Piccolo has a line where he says something like, "How pathetic that the great Demon King Piccolo has protected some brat." This is a great line because it reminds us of how far Piccolo has come, right? He is the reincarnation of the great Demon King Piccolo, who is the evil side of Kami. However, when this version of Dragon Ball Z aired in the US, almost nobody knew who Great Demon King Piccolo was because that part of Dragon Ball had never aired in the US. So it makes total sense to cut this line, but it's still really unfortunate. Okay, let's check out the last part of the ocean dub.
Piccolo!
Gohan, you're the only real friend that I've ever had. I want to thank you.
But Piccolo...
I remember the first day that I brought you here. You've changed so much since then. The harder things got, the more determined you became. I'm proud of you. Hey, sorry I was so rough on you. I knew you could take it. Get him, Gohan.
This is really, really bad, and I have a lot to say, but I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. In the original Japanese, Piccolo basically says something like, "You're the only one that ever talked to me like a normal person. You're the only one that ever talked to me in a normal way." Or maybe something like, "You're the only one that ever had a proper, sincere conversation with me." I know this may seem like a small difference, but I think it's an important one because it highlights the fact that Gohan was able to impact Piccolo not by being his friend and going out to the movies and playing around. No, all it took was Gohan treating Piccolo like a normal person. Remember, at the beginning of Z, aside from Goku, just about everybody else is afraid of Piccolo. At that point in time, Piccolo wasn't used to having people just talk to him, for lack of a better word, like a normal human being. But Gohan did that. And so that is what Piccolo is highlighting here. So I don't really like Piccolo calling Gohan his friend, and I don't like Piccolo saying thank you. I'll explain why in just a moment. The next thing I want to point out is that this version adds a bunch of stuff that Piccolo doesn't say in the original Japanese. Piccolo basically has a speech about how Gohan has grown stronger and he's proud of Gohan and he knew he could handle it. No. Piccolo does not say any of this. First of all, this whole extra speech thing shifts the focus to Gohan and how much he's grown stronger. But that's not what this moment is about. This moment is about the fact that even though Piccolo kidnapped him and even though Piccolo was abusing him physically, Gohan always treated him nicely. So in a sense, it's about the fact that Gohan never changed, and that is what changed Piccolo. But in this version, Piccolo is talking about how much Gohan changed. No, that cheapens this moment. Also, saying I'm proud of you and I'm sorry and like I was saying earlier, thank you, all of this is out of character for Piccolo. I'm not saying that Piccolo doesn't care about Gohan. He absolutely does. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sacrificed himself. What I'm saying is that at this point in his life, Piccolo is not ready to be so open and emotional. Even as he's about to die, Piccolo is still putting up the tough guy, cool guy front in the original Japanese. In the original Japanese, Piccolo has that line where he says, "It wasn't so bad spending this past year with you." For Piccolo, that's basically saying, "I love you, Gohan, and this was the best year of my life." But Piccolo would never come out and actually say that, at least not at this moment. The language that he uses when he's talking to Gohan and he's saying the whole, "It wasn't so bad spending this past year with you," really supports what I'm saying here because, for example, he uses the second person pronoun kisama. This basically is used to mean you, but it's very rude, and often in English it's translated as bastard. Also, Piccolo uses the sentence final particle ze. This is basically being used for a little bit of emphasis, but ze is often used by characters that want to sound kind of tough or cool. I also want to mention something that happens in the Android saga that proves my point here. Right before Piccolo decides that he has to go fuse with Kami, Krillin tells Piccolo, "Hey, we're friends, right?" Or something like that. And Piccolo has a very, very interesting reaction. He basically says, "No, we're not friends. I am Mazoku. I am part of the demon tribe, and I am here to conquer the world. Don't you dare think that I am your friend." And then he flies off and he goes to fuse with Kami. Why does he react this way, even though by this point in time, he's already been through all of the Namek stuff with Krillin and Gohan and Goku, and he's trained with Goku during the 3 years leading up to the appearance of the androids? It doesn't make sense, right? No, this makes total sense because that is who Piccolo is. He has that emotional interior, but he has a tough outer shell, and he doesn't want to admit that he actually cares about Gohan and everybody else around him. So go back a few years to this moment where he's talking to Gohan as he's dying, and you can understand that Piccolo wouldn't say stuff like, "I'm sorry and thank you and I'm proud of you." That is too much for him to say at this point in time. So I do not like how the Ocean dub turned Piccolo into Daddy Piccolo and has him saying, "I'm proud of you, son." And one more thing about what Piccolo says here, his last words are, "Get him, Gohan." Again, if Piccolo thinks that Gohan can take on Nappa or Nappa and Vegeta, then why did he sacrifice himself? Piccolo's last words are supposed to be, "Don't die, Gohan," or something like that. That actually makes sense. Piccolo just sacrificed himself because he knows Gohan's life is in danger. He also knows that Goku is almost there, so Gohan just has to survive for a little bit longer. Instead, in this version, Piccolo is basically telling Gohan to go get himself killed at the hands of Nappa. And one last thing I want to mention, this is about Gohan. You may have noticed that in my translation, I have Gohan calling Piccolo Mr. Piccolo. That's because in the original Japanese, Gohan doesn't call Piccolo Piccolo. He either calls him Piccolo-san or Oji-san. Now, generally speaking, if you want to refer to somebody in a polite way, you add san to their name. And Gohan is a polite, well-educated child, so it makes total sense that he would call Piccolo Piccolo-san. As for Oji-san, this can be translated as uncle or a general term used to refer to usually a middle-aged man, somebody at least in their late 30s, I would say, into 40s or 50s. Now, there's no exact equivalent to Oji-san in standard American English, so translating Oji-san can be tricky. But really, the point that I want to get across here is that Gohan is using this as a term of endearment. And so when Gohan yells out, "Oji-san," after Piccolo dies, it's a really standout moment because nobody else would do this in all of Dragon Ball, and it really highlights the relationship between Gohan and Piccolo. Unfortunately, it's a little bit tricky to do that in English, but my attempt to do that was to have Gohan call Piccolo Mr. Piccolo. This isn't the case in the Ocean dub, and as you will see, it's also not the case in the Funimation dub. They just have Gohan call Piccolo Piccolo. I think this is a little bit unfortunate, but it's not a huge deal either. Okay, so it's time to rate the Ocean dub. And yes, I'm aware that the Ocean dub was intended for kids, and that's why they had to censor it. But here's the thing, I don't care, and that doesn't matter. Because the point of this video is to assess whether the English dubs of Dragon Ball Z are accurate or not, and this one absolutely is not. In fact, it pretty much takes everything that makes this scene good and impactful, throws it out the window, and does the exact opposite. So I'm gonna have to give the Ocean dub a 0.5 out of 10 in terms of its accuracy, but I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10 for how much it made me laugh. Now we're ready to take a look at the Funimation redub.
Piccolo?
It's okay, kid. No sweat.
No, you can't be hurt, Piccolo. You just can't. We need you.
I'm not gonna make it. It's up to you. You must stop them.
Piccolo, hold on just a little longer. My dad's coming. He'll save us. Just hold on.
Piccolo's life force is fading away, and mine along with it. Goku must not have gotten there in time. When we cease to exist, so will the Dragon Balls of this world. But legend tales of others on Namek. Find them, use them to wish us back.
It's ironic, isn't it? After all my years of training to defeat your father, I'd go out like this, trying to save you, his son.
Piccolo.
Gohan, you're the only real friend that I've ever had. I want to thank you.
Just hold on a little longer.
I still remember the first day I brought you here. You were small, helpless. You've changed so much since then. The harder things got, the more determined you became. The more dangers you faced, the stronger you grew as a warrior. I know I was hard on you, but it was for your own good. You're like the son I never had. I'm proud of you. Goodbye, my friend.
This is still really close to the Ocean dub, which means it's really bad. Yeah, there's a few differences, but it's still way closer to the Ocean dub than the original Japanese. So basically, my analysis of the Ocean dub applies to the Funimation dub. I don't want to repeat myself too much, so I'm just going to run through this really quickly. Piccolo doesn't tell Gohan to run away. Kami tells Mr. Popo to wish him back. Piccolo basically has the same long speech where he focuses on how much Gohan changed. Piccolo bears all of his emotions, he calls Gohan his friend, and he also says, "You're the son I never had." This line is horrible, and it's completely out of character for Piccolo. However, there is one positive thing I can say about the Funimation redub. Remember that Demon King Piccolo line that was completely omitted from the Ocean dub? Well, I like how they handled it in this version. Of course, even in this version, they couldn't include the Demon King Piccolo line as is, because a lot of people would have been confused by that reference. So in this version, they have Piccolo make a comment about how ironic it is that he went out protecting the son of the guy that he was training to defeat. I thought this was a clever solution that is in line with the spirit of the original line. Now, what would I rate the Funimation redub? Well, it's only slightly better than the Ocean dub, so I'm going to give it a 1.5 out of 10. And now we're ready to take a look at the Kai dub.
Why'd you do that?
Just run, Gohan, before it...
No, you can't die like this, not by saving me! Piccolo!
Damn it, boy, run away. While there's still time.
Forget about it, I'm not gonna run away, not if it means leaving you here like this! Just hold on! Dad's coming!
So this is how my story ends after all. Goku couldn't make it in time to prevent Piccolo's death. But in his last moments, my dark counterpart outshone even me. An encouraging thought. What a sorry excuse I've become. Me, Piccolo, laying down his life to protect some whiny little pipsqueak.
Piccolo!
Gohan, you're the only person I've ever known who didn't treat me like a monster. Truth be told, this last year wasn't so bad. Thank you, Gohan.
No! Ah!
This is really good, and for the most part, I really like this version. I think that they did a great job at both being accurate and having something that sounds natural. There's a couple things that I want to point out here that I think were done really well. For example, the moment with Kami. I love how they translated this because they made it really clear that Kami wasn't talking about power or strength. Kami says that Piccolo outshone him, and that is something that is really encouraging. That really gets the point across that what Kami is talking about is how Piccolo chose to sacrifice himself and do something selfless, something really good. So I think that captures the intent of the original Japanese line perfectly. I also really like how they handled the Demon King Piccolo line. In this version, he says, "What a sorry excuse I've become. Me, Piccolo, laying down my life for a whiny pipsqueak." The clever thing about this translation is that even though he doesn't say Demon King Piccolo, it's still possible to interpret it that way. Also, another great thing is that this version actually uses the word die. However, I do have one complaint, and that is that Piccolo's last line in this version is, "Thank you, Gohan." As you probably remember in the original Japanese, it's "Don't die, go go go!" So I do wish that it would have been something along the lines of "Don't die." It doesn't have to be an exact word-for-word translation, but something closer to "Don't die" I think could have been better. "Thank you, Gohan" isn't that bad. It's nowhere near as bad as "You're the son I never had," "I'm proud of you, Gohan," "Get him, Gohan," or anything like that. So I don't like it, but again, it's not as bad as what we've seen in the other translations in the Funimation redub and in the Ocean dub. So what would I give the Kai dub? Well, aside from Piccolo's last line, I think that this is a really good adaptation of the original Japanese. So I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. And lastly, let's take a look at the Spanish Latin American dub.
Señor Piccolo!
Oye, Gohan, no.
Señor Piccolo, ¿por qué me salvó? ¿Por qué?
Te digo que huyas de aquí. Apresúrate.
No se muera, ya no tardará en venir mi papá. Él lo derrotará, por favor, no se muera.
Creo que al fin llegó mi hora, Mr. Popo. Goku no llegó a tiempo. Pero me siento muy feliz porque Piccolo pudo sobrepasar mis poderes a última hora. Estoy muy orgulloso de él. Es una verdadera vergüenza. El gran Piccolo de Maku salvó la vida de un niño. Es lo peor.
Señor Piccolo.
Gohan, tú fuiste el único que habló conmigo como un amigo sincero. No fue tan aburrido estar contigo durante un año. Gohan, te quiero.
Señor Piccolo.
Overall, this is a solid adaptation, and it's actually very faithful to the source material. However, there are two really big problems that I have to point out. The first problem is in the part with Kami. In this version, Kami says, "Piccolo has surpassed my powers." He uses the word poderes in Spanish, which is powers. Yes, it's written in a slightly ambiguous way, but when you think about this line within the context of what's happening in this moment, it doesn't really make sense to interpret this as actual power. What Kami is talking about is Piccolo choosing to do something so incredibly good that it kind of outshines Kami, right? It kind of makes Kami go like, whoa, I was not expecting Piccolo to do that, but it makes me happy. So it's very strange that they went with the word powers in this case. The original Japanese doesn't even have the word power. So I don't get why they went with this. The Spanish Latin American dub is known for being very accurate. They rarely disappoint, but this time I have to conclude that this was a mistranslation. And the other problem that I have to point out is Piccolo's last words. So in this version, Piccolo says, Te quiero Gohan, which means I love you, Gohan. And of course, this is I love you in a familial sense, so it's like a dad telling his son, I love you. Now look, this is a really sweet and emotional moment, and in a vacuum, I think that it's great. I love it. However, within the context of Piccolo, I have to say that this was a really bad choice. I've already explained multiple times why. Piccolo is not this kind of character. He's not the kind of guy that lets his emotions fly, especially not at this point in time. So unfortunately, I have to say that this is completely out of character for Piccolo. I do want to point out one quick positive thing about the Spanish Latin American dub though, and that is that Gohan calls Piccolo Señor Piccolo, which captures the vibe of the original Japanese really well. It's cute, and I think it fits Gohan really, really well. So what would I rate this version? Well, even though most of it is actually quite faithful to the source material, those two problems that I pointed out are significant. So I'm gonna have to give the Spanish Latin American dub of Dragon Ball Z a 7.5 out of 10. So that means that this time the winner is the Dragon Ball Z Kai dub. Congratulations to Kai. And with that, I think it's time for me to phase into another dimension. Wish me back, okay, guys? Check out the video that's on screen right now, and I'll see you in the next one.